And we're in our last passage in Genesis, and so we have completed the book of Genesis. We did from Abraham all the way to now. We studied the life of the patriarchs, and then before that, I had done Genesis 1 through 11, so we finished the whole book. There was a gap in between, but getting through Genesis is a feat for all of us, that's for sure. So this is the last chapter, but it's a significant chapter. It's very, I don't know how you want to put it. Genesis begins with God creating life and the order, creation order, but then Genesis ends in death, and it's kind of a I don't know what you want to call it, a pessimistic type of ending to it. And I think it's meant for a reason, and hopefully I can take you through that of why does Genesis start so good, but then it doesn't end very well. And in this is just it's about two burials. It's the burial of Jacob, the last of the main patriarchs, and then Joseph will die, and it records his burial. And you're thinking, what's the lesson here? Well, what you're going to see is that both individuals want to be buried in the promised land. And they make that request, that's their dying request. So like imagine yourself and you're getting ready to pass away or whatever, and you're like, okay, look, I'm going to die in Bakersfield, but I want to be buried in Hawaii or something like that, right? And you make that request, and your family's got to follow through on that, and hopefully. And so that's what they're doing. And the issue then comes up then for all of us is, where do you want to leave your bones? And what it's about is they want to be where all the future promises will come to fruition one day. And they know that what God has promised Abraham is that they will have the land to themselves, which also implies this, that since they're dying, they are not seeing the promises come to fruition in their lifetime, which implies something. It implies resurrection. That the only way then God is going to make good on his promises in their minds is, if I'm going to die, then that means I'm going to be resurrected. And so resurrection was early on in the patriarchs' minds. I mean, even in Abraham, the concept of resurrection was on his mind. About Isaac, the writer of Hebrews says that in Abraham's mind, that if he sacrificed Isaac, that God would raise him back from the dead. That's what Hebrews says. And so resurrection was on their mind. So this is what the patriarchs knew, that, well, okay, if the promises don't come in my life, then that implies I have to be resurrected. And so if I'm going to be resurrected, I want to be resurrected in the location where all the promises will come to fruition. And that's how you have to see it. And there's spiritual principles about that for us as well. And really it comes down to this, is like, okay, where do you want to bury your bones, so to speak? And I'm using that as more of a metaphor. Where do you want to invest in? And what the patriarchs are saying is, we are investing in the future of where God will make all this happen. And that's the principle for us. Where are you investing your life in? Is it here and now, or am I investing my life into the future that God has for me? And it seems simplistic, and it seems almost like, I don't know, like a meme or something like that. But the question all of us have to answer is, which world am I living for? Am I living for the here and now, or am I living for the future? Because what ends up happening is, the more we get comfortable in this world, we do start living for here and now. We start living for retirement. We start living for, how our life is going to go, and realizing that you're in the shadowlands. This is not home. You're a pilgrim. You're a traveler. You're a sojourn, and you have to balance life out like that. Otherwise, you lose focus on the future. And if you start living for here and now, you betray your future self. And that's what the patriarchs are not doing. They don't betray their future self. They realize where their future's at. And so that's the idea of burying their bones in the land. So it's a metaphor in a spiritual application is, okay, so where am I investing in? Hey, look, we all have to live in this life. And we don't want to, I don't want to get to the point where I'm so heavenly minded, I'm no earthly good. We have to be salt and light. We have to do things. We have to buy insurance. We have to save for a rainy day. We have to have retirement. We have to save up. We have to do those things. So it's not a lack of responsibility when you live for the next life. It's just, I'm not going to sink my roots in too deep here because I know the permanency is in the future. And I've got to think in those terms in the sense that what is valuable in the future? What is the most valuable? Because, hey, I could be a CEO of a company. I could have $1 million or $1 billion or whatever and sit in the lap of luxury. But the day I die, I don't take that with me. I lose that. And that doesn't mean that I don't strive to work hard and it doesn't strive to achieve certain things and bless other people and stuff like that. It doesn't mean that. It just means that when I leave, I ain't taking it with me. The only things they knew that were taken, they said, bury my bones. That's the only thing they took. And why? Because they knew their bones would be resurrected. And that's what was important to them. They wanted to be physically where the promises were at. I know that's a long introduction, but I'm trying to give you a flavor of what the text is. So here's Jacob when he dies. Then he charged them and said to them, I am to be gathered to my people. So being gathered to my people is a euphemism, a Hebraism, a Jewish idiom for I'm dying. And gathered to the people means he's going to a specific place in Sheol. And so here's the underworld. Here's Sheol, or in the Greek it's Hades. And there's 4 compartments in the underworld. And this is called the realm of the dead. Fallen angels go there. Demons go there. And before the cross, all humans went there, regenerate and unregenerate. And as you can see, when Jacob is saying, I'm going to be gathered to my people, he is referring to what we call paradise or Abraham's bosom. That's where all regenerate believers in God went before the cross. And then if you see there's a great gulf that separates the two, that's Luke 16. And then the pit or Hades is what we call hell. But that's not the proper term for it. Where unbelievers go right now when they die, they go to the pit or they go to Hades. That's the technical term for it. And they sit there and they await final judgment at the great white throne judgment, eventually to be cast into the lake of fire. So it's also in the underworld. Then you have the bottomless pit, and don't confuse that with the pit. The bottomless pit is the abuso, and this is where temporarily confined demons and fallen angels are. Temporarily confined. And then you move to Tartarus, and Tartarus is where permanently confined fallen angels are sent to from Genesis 6. And they'll never be released out of Tartarus until the final judgment at the great white throne judgment. So there's a lot of things going on. Now, where is this location? It's underneath us. It's in the earth. It's in the center of the earth. That's where all of this is at. This is where the realm of the dead is. It's in the earth. And this is where, if you have a bottomless pit, this is the only thing that makes sense of where you could have a bottomless pit. It has to be geocentric in the middle of the earth to have a bottomless pit. And so anyway, that's where the realm of the dead is. And that's what he's talking about. I'm going to be gathered to my people. Now, no one is in Abraham's bosom anymore. It is empty. At the ascension of the cross, after the cross, at the ascension, when Jesus went back into heaven, he took the inhabitants of Abraham's bosom and took them to paradise, or took them, to heaven, and transferred paradise. Paradise is no longer in Abraham's bosom. Paradise is now in heaven, and it encircles the city, the New Jerusalem. So you have the city is the center, and then around the city is paradise. And so Paul will talk about going to paradise, the third heaven. Paul had either a near-death experience or he had some type of vision. He almost died And then he saw heaven, and he said, I was taken to paradise, or the third heaven. And so now it is transferred. And so that's where people go, to be absent from the body, to be present with the Lord in heaven now. That's what's proper to say. But before the cross, it was proper to say, gathered to your people, which would be paradise or Abraham's bosom. Okay, so bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, which is before Mamre in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought with the field of Ephron the Hittite as a possession for a burial place. So going back to Abraham, if you recall, this was the only place that Abraham purchased in the promised land. And so it belonged to him. And that's why all the patriarchs wanted to be buried there, because it was the only ownership that they actually had of any part of the land. There they buried Abraham and Sarah, his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah, his wife, and there I buried Leah. The field and the cave that is there were purchased from the sons of Heth. And when Jacob had finished commanding his sons, he drew his feet up into his bed and breathed his last. Drew his feet up into his bed means he was sitting on the edge of his bed as he was blessing the boys, and then he just got into bed, basically, and then died, is what drawing up his feet means. And was gathered to his people. So he went to Abraham's bosom. So then we move to chapter 50. Then Joseph fell on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. So this is interesting that Joseph embalms Jacob, because what Joseph's intent is that, okay, Dad, if you want to be buried in the promised land, we have to embalm you. Because your body won't make it. So it says that he got the physicians. So embalming in Egypt, they had either physicians or they would have the magicians or sorcerers. So there was a religious aspect to it. But what Joseph does is he keeps the sorcerer magicians out of it, and he only brings in the physicians. And if you ever study Egyptian embalming, they would take the organs out, put them in jars. Then they would stuff the body with all kinds of, different spices and stuff like that. It was weird. I don't know. It was preparing the body to enter into the Egyptian realm of the dead. But Joseph is not playing into that. He doesn't do that. What he is doing is ensuring that the body will last until they get him to Machpelah. So as I was reading this week, I know it sounds weird, I was studying Egyptian embalming. And what they were able to do, they put all kinds of resins, they put salt, they put all kinds of things on the body that would actually preserve the body for a very long time. And it says 40 days were required for him, for such are the days required for those who are embalmed, and the Egyptians mourned for him 70 days. So Egyptian embalming sometimes took 70 days to do it, the whole process. And it preserved the body. That's why when they dig up these mummies, they're very well preserved. They had a whole process that they went through. So Joseph takes that. He excludes the religious aspects, but he takes the embalming because he's got to get his dad over there. And of course, they didn't have the kind of things that we have. So he uses what the Egyptians have to do that and to make the journey to Canaan. Anyway, now when the days of mourning were past, Joseph spoke to the household of Pharaoh, saying, "If now I have found favor in your eyes, please speak in my hearing of Pharaoh, saying, my father made me swear, saying, behold, I am dying in my grave, which I dug for myself in the land of Canaan. There you shall bury me. Now therefore, please let me go up and bury my father, and I will come back." And Pharaoh said, "Go up and bury your father, as he made you swear." So Joseph went up to bury his father, and with him went up all the servants of Pharaoh and the elders of the house and all the elders of the land of Egypt, as well as the house of Joseph, his brothers, and his father's house. So it was a huge entourage, huge. So they had Egyptian protection, everything. They're not going to go into Canaan without protection. So it's huge entourage. Only their little ones and their flocks and their herds they left in the land of Goshen. And there they went up with him, both chariots and horsemen, and it was a great gathering. So it's a huge funeral procession, huge. And it I don't know how long it took, but It took, it could have taken weeks for them to do this. Anyway, then they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond the Jordan, and they mourned there with a great and very solemn lamentation. He observed 7 days of mourning for his father. And when the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, saw the mourning at the threshing floor of Atad, they said, "This is a deep mourning of the Egyptians. Therefore its name shall be called, or was called, Abel Mizraim, which is beyond the Jordan." So it got the Canaanites' attention. Okay. So finally they bury him in Machpelah. So his sons did for him just as he had commanded them. For his sons carried to him the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah before Mamre, which Abraham brought from the field of the Ephron the Hittite as property for a burial place. And after he had buried his father, Joseph returned to Egypt, he and his brothers and all who went up with him to bury his father. Okay, so a lot of details there, but it's important because if you understand the issue of Machpelah and where it's at and how significant this is to Israel, I think you'll have a better flavor. So here is Hebron, and you can see Jerusalem north of it. So the little red dot is where Machpelah is. You can drive past it. I've driven past it going through Hebron, and you can see Machpelah. Where the cave is now, there is the cave, and what's happened is the Muslims have taken over because this area is Judea and Samaria, or what's called the West Bank, but the Ibrahimi Mosque is over it. So they have taken over it. And so here's the mosque there over the cave of Machpelah. And you see where the corner, you see the corner of the building and it's like black in that area? That's where a lot of Jewish people will go to pray to God because inside is the bones of the patriarchs. So this is the tomb of Abraham in the cave. It's not a cave anymore. Obviously, it's a mosque. But this is Abraham's sarcophagus. This is Isaac's sarcophagus. So they were all buried there. And this is Jacob's sarcophagus. All there. And to try to get in there is very difficult. A lot of Jews will try to get in there, and sometimes they do, and they allow them in there, and they'll pray. But this is what you're looking at. So anyway, it's real and it's important because this was the place that Abraham bought. It's kind of like a deposit on a future promise that God would give them. Okay, so what it was a claim to the land, a physical claim to a future reality. That's what was happening. So that's why they wanted to be buried there. So he wasn't just sentimental, like, hey, I want to be buried, next to my family or anything like that. It wasn't sentimental per se. It was the hope of the bodily resurrection. So anyway, the same thing is today. And I'm struggling to communicate this because when you're Jewish, you were given physical promises by God. We have been given heavenly promises, so I'm having a hard time relating this, but I'm gonna do my best. So right there is the Mount of Olives, and you can see that all the white there, the limestone, those are graves, Jewish graves. Okay, and the reason they want to be buried on the Mount of Olives is because of Zechariah 14. It says his foot will stand on the Mount of Olives, and he'll split the mountain in two, and Messiah will be there to rescue Israel in the end. So every Jew knows that passage, and so they bury themselves on the Mount of Olives so that they can be at the spot where Messiah comes and resurrects them. And so here's a shot from the Temple Mount area, and you can see it in the distance. It's just loaded with graves, just absolutely loaded with graves. And here's a shot looking down to the Kidron Valley, and then obviously the Temple Mount. You can see all the graves there. It's just packed solid with graves. I don't think there's any more room there. There might be. I don't know. I mean, it's just packed when you go there. Anyway, this is where it's at. It's in, you can see Samaria and Judea, right? That's what's the left calls the West Bank, but we call it Judea and Samaria. Now, to the right, I want to show you something. To the right is what Judea and Samaria looks like as far as populations are concerned. So you have the orange area is Palestinian-controlled area, okay? Now, please understand, Israel controls the entire area, but these are where the Palestinians have their refugee camps and their cities and stuff. And then you have the purplish or Israeli where they build and have their homes. Okay, what's the point here? Why am I showing you this? I'm showing you the Jewish ties to the land and how important it is to be tied to where future events will happen, like on the Mount of Olives. But I'm also showing you their claim to the land. And this is one of the hardest things for me to understand, even as a Christian. I wouldn't live in Judea and Samaria if they paid me to live there. Why? Because I am living next to the same mentality with the Palestinians as you saw with Hamas. I wouldn't raise my family there. I wouldn't send my kids to school there. And yet, there is a significant Jewish population that lives in Judea and Samaria. Now, I know what everyone is in this room is asking. Why would you live in an area where the neighborhood across the street wants to kill you, wants to slice your neck open and cut your head off and say, Allahu Akbar? Why would you live there? Because I wouldn't. I'm like, no way would I raise my family. No way would I. But here's the thing. I went into Judea and Samaria, and I interviewed Caroline Glick. I was in the heart of it, and she was in the area of Judea. I'm not going to tell where she lives. But she's in a Jewish, it's not a kibbutzim, it's the other one. It's a bigger one. I can't remember the name of it. And I'm like, no way would I live here. But she will. Why? Why do the Jewish people live next to people who want to kill them? You know why? Because they say it's my land. God gave me this land and no one's going to scare me off. God gave me this land. And they have, and that's what I'm trying to communicate to you. And I don't know how to do it because I don't know how to relate to this. Because we haven't been given land. But when God gave them the land, they will sit there and fight for it, no matter if the guy across the street wants to kill them. They will raise their families and they will say, come and get us, because we will not be bullied off this land. This is what God gave me. And I'm going to sit my posts on there. I'm going to sink my roots in there because this is God ordained. And man, it's just, when you're over there, it's hard to relate to that. Because like I told you, I wouldn't raise my family in that. But again, I don't have anything to compare it with. God didn't give me Bakersfield. You know what I mean? And say, here's where you're going to live. He didn't do that to me. So I have a hard time relating that. But that's what's happening in the text. That's why Israel fights and refuses to move off. When I went to the Gaza Strip, they live right next to the Gaza Strip. I wouldn't. There's killers right over here. But they live right next to it. And why? Because this is our land. That's why. And I want you to think about this. The Jewish people haven't come to faith in Yeshua yet. But they have enough faith in the promises of God about the land that causes them to have the Zionist movement. That's what Zionism is about. It's a movement of this is what God has given me, and we will all experience it in the future. That's what they're thinking. That's why they're setting down stakes. That's why they live in Judea and Samaria. So how do we relate to that? Because I don't have any tangible thing that God has promised me except the future. That's the only thing I can relate to, because he hasn't promised the church land or material blessings. He's promised us a future, and it has material blessings. And don't get me wrong, the future is very physical, very physical. But I can't stand on it like the Israelites are standing on land today, if that makes sense. So the issue then is, I guess, trying to relate this is, where should I want to be? Where is my promise of inheritance? My promise and your promise of inheritance is in the future. It's not here. It's in the future. It's in eternity. It's in the kingdom age. That's where our promises are. That's where all the physicality comes through. That's where our glorified body comes from. That's where ruling and reigning with Christ comes from. And like Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world. So that's why there's nothing to me to anchor myself to this world. Yes, I have to be responsible. There's nothing to anchor me to it. And look what the problem is in this world system. The whole world lies under the sway of the wicked one. So no wonder I feel like a fish out of water. There's something not right here. I feel it all the time. I feel it every time I wake up. There's something not right. Nothing fits here. Everything is out of place here. Do you feel that? I feel out of place. Good. You should feel out of place, because that's what the Israelites, when they were in Goshen, felt. This is not our home. This is Egypt. So I know I'm going to be here, Joseph, but when I die, I need you to take me back. Get me out of this land. This is not my home. I want to go back to what God gave me. And so in essence, our home is not here. It's in heaven, the New Jerusalem, and eventually the kingdom age. Oh, okay, so that's how I can relate to what's happening here. Okay, so some practical application with this. A lot of people forget that, and they forget that we're just a pilgrim, and so they start living for here and now. But if you live for here and now, you're going to be sorely disappointed, because things don't work here properly. So I'll give you an example. Last year, 2024, Americans spent $113 billion on lottery tickets. Okay? It's a lot of money. But those who win, do they feel any happier? Or do they have any life enhancement? Well, they pay their bills off. That's a plus. But here's what they find. This goes back to several studies. 1978 found that major lottery winners were no happier than non-winners, and even reported less enjoyment from everyday pleasures. Well, that's not good. I thought winning the lottery, I'd be happy, but they're not. In 2008, a Dutch study echoed this. Lottery winners had no significant effect on the household's happiness. Yeah, I guess not. If you have dysfunction in your family, having more money doesn't do anything about the dysfunction. It doesn't clear up the dysfunction. You still have the dysfunction, yet you have more money. That's all. According to the New York Times, researchers note no study has ever found that people are happier in the first year after winning the lottery. So money can change your temporary circumstances, pay off a few bills in there, but it doesn't guarantee joy. You know why? Because we're not made for this world. We're made for the next world, and the next world is supposed to give us joy. That's where our joy is found. That's where our hope is, not in this world. And so that's what we're trying to aim at. Okay, so this is 1 John chapter 2. Look what he says. Do not love the world or the things of the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. So here's what can happen to a believer. You start loving this world too much and sinking your roots very deep here. What happens is you will love the world and you don't have the love of the Father in you anymore. It doesn't mean you're not saved. It just means you're not exuding how the love of God would come through you, because you're loving something you shouldn't love. You're turning the world or materialism or money or whatever it is into an idol. So now the love of the Father's not in you. You're loving materialism, whatever it is. So like Jesus said, you can't serve two masters, right? It's the idea there. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh are basically what our sin nature wants. The lust of the eyes, what we visually think is desirable, even though it's illicit. And the pride of life, boasting or the display of self, is not of the Father, but of this world. So here's what happens. What he's saying is, look, if you start living for this world and the love of the Father's not in you, here's how you will degenerate. You will degenerate in being ruled by your sin nature. You'll be ruled by what your eyes desire, what you see, and you'll be ruled by the vain boasting of life. Look what I've accomplished. Look what I have. Look what I've done. Those things will start taking over. That's how you know the love of the Father's not in you. And now you're truly living for this world. And look what he says about this world. And the world is passing away, and the lust of it. So why live for it? If it's passing away, if it's perishing, we're supposed to set our priorities in the next world. But he who does the will of God abides forever. Now, that's an interesting phrase. He who does the will of God abides forever. So what he's saying is, look, if you get caught up in this world system of wanting what it has, desiring what it has, and get caught up in that, you won't be able to do the will of God. But the opposite is true. If you stay focused on doing the will of God in obedience to him, he says, this will abide forever. Well, what does he mean? It means that, look, abiding is not a salvation term. Abiding is a discipleship term. So he's saying, look, if you live for the next life, if you don't betray your future self by living correctly, so what will happen is you will cultivate an eternal fellowship with God. You will be able to produce fruit, which will bear for the next life rewards, right? And that will abide forever. So what you do will matter forever. If you live for this world and you do for this world, it will perish with you. It won't go past the grave. So that's the idea there. So let me give you some examples of what I'm talking about, of living for something bigger than just the moment. Here's a gal, and I didn't even know this was a professional thing. Did you? Frisbee? Not frisbee, but disc golf. Frolf? Is it frolf? This frisbee golf. Yeah, frolf. Anyway, I guess it's professional now. I didn't know that. Okay, so this gal, she's a female, and of course, these transgender dudes want to go in there and mess up the whole sport. So she refused to participate. So she says females must be protected in our division. Wilson said she walked away. This is unfair. I refuse to play. After I said the word him, this disc golf staff member told me that if I misgender him again, I will be penalized and removed from the tour. Today, I most likely ended my career, and that is okay because this is bigger than me. That's a woman, and I don't know if she's a believer or not, but she is at least living on the realm of principle, at least. And what we would say is people who are living for this world would not bow out. They would say, I don't want to be cut out of participation. Well, okay, whatever, but you're gonna say it's okay for a male to play a sport? So what she's saying, there's something bigger here than me competing. And that's the idea, that I'm willing to let things go. I don't have to be the professional frisbee thrower or whatever it is, and I can let that go because I'm not gonna tarnish my reputation or devalue my priorities because some dude dressed up in a skirt wants to play. I'm not doing that. Here's how it went on her competition. Oops, where'd it go? Oh, maybe I don't have it. Oh, I thought I had the video. Anyway, she went up there and she says, I refuse to compete because of this male, and that was it. And she walked away. So it was good for her. Good for her. I hope a lot of people continue to do this whole thing. But that's what we're talking about. Now, there's a tension here. You can't live so heavenly minded that you're no earthly good. So there's a practical tension here, and that goes with the dominion mandate. That goes with the Great Commission as well. And so, like Jesus said in Luke 17, or John 17, I'm sorry, you're in the world, but you're not of the world. Okay? And so I've got to do my responsibilities that I'm called to do. I'm a steward. I'm to bless others in the broken world, all those things. So I just can't just put on the white sheet and just wait for eternity. That's not how it works. We have a job to do. We have and so we work, we live, we move, we have our being and all that stuff, but I don't set roots down. So here's what we're called to do. I'm called to make life better in the fallen world, but I don't live for it. I'm responsible in this world, but I'm not ruled by it. I'm stewards of our resources, but I'm not owned by them. I live in the world, but use my material possessions to win friends for eternity. I fight evil and lies, but not for the applause or status. I invest in people, not in possessions. I'm financially wise, but our true investments are in heaven. I'm excellent in every earthly work that I do, but I don't build my identity on it. See, if you can balance that out, then you can do the dominion mandate, do the Great Commission, and then also live for eternity. So you don't want to get out of balance, is what I'm trying to say, is the idea. Now, let me give you an example of fulfilling our responsibility. So what we're seeing on the political stage, on a global stage, is we now have somebody in leadership, thank God, that is responsible, okay? And saying, hey, we just can't keep rolling with status quo. That's what believers are supposed to do. We see something that's broke and we need to fix it. That's part of being in the dominion mandate, is we're in a fallen world, things are broken, our job is to fix it. We develop medicine, we develop new ways of doing things, better ways of doing things, okay? So like Trump, we have been living with this tariff situation, and look, I'm not going to go into all the details of a tariff, but what I want you to understand is we have been living post-World War II in a world where we have been helping everybody on the planet and them charging us crazy tariffs and us charging them nothing. And it's the idea is we were trying to get the economies back up after World War II, and we were the fat cats on the scene, and now we're not the fat cats, we're in $36 trillion in debt. And we can't keep the status quo. It's broke. And so what Trump is trying to do is saying, look, we can't keep rolling like this. We have to change the status quo because we'll die. So that's an example of what I'm saying. And even billionaire Bill Ackman says, look, what he's doing is going to work. And so what my point is, even though we're heavenly minded, we still have to look at what we can do better. We still have to look at, hey, can we make this better? We can't accept status quo. That's what happens to a lot of people. They start accepting status quo. And what happens with status quo? You die. Your country will die. Anyway, let's go back. So when Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, perhaps Joseph will hate us and may actually repay us for all the evil which we did to him. I thought we were done with this. They're not. So they sent messengers to Joseph. They didn't even go themselves, saying, before your father died, he commanded us, saying, thus you shall say to Joseph, I beg you, please forgive the trespass of your brothers and their sin. We don't know if he told them that. We don't know. They might have been lying. We don't know. For they did evil to you. Anyway, now please forgive the trespasses of your servants of the God of your father. And Joseph wept when they spoke to him. And I can understand that reaction. I think all of us can understand that reaction. If he already didn't communicate that they were forgiven, that's kind of an insult to him that they would ask, will you please forgive me now that father's dead? Because what are they doing? It shows you their mindset and it shows you their attitude. Hasn't Joseph shown you enough that he has forgiven you? He could have killed all of you if he wanted to, but he didn't. In fact, he showed you grace upon grace upon grace upon grace. And you still, I don't know if he's forgiven us. Let's lie to him possibly and say, Dad wanted you to forgive us. So he cries. And I could understand it. And it's like, from Joseph's perspective, it's like, haven't I been able to be forthright with you? You don't think I would forgive you at this point? You think that now that Dad's dead, I'm going to hammer you? That I only did this for Dad? That I didn't do this for God? I'm going to hammer you now. I'm going to kill all of you now that Dad's dead. Is that what you think of me? They still don't understand forgiveness. They don't understand Joseph. Why? Because they project on him that which they would do themselves. That's why. Joseph said to them, do not be afraid, for I am in the place of God. Come on, guys. But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring it about as it is this day, to save many people alive. Guys, I've already told you this. I see this from the perspective of God. Now, therefore, do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your little ones. And he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. Okay, what's happening here? They're projecting, this is called moral projection, okay? When somebody has their own morality, not from God, but their own morality, whatever that might be, and they think others are like them, that others think like them, others would do what they would do. So I want you to think in this perspective. The boys are thinking that if I were Joseph and Dad died, I would hammer them. I would seek revenge on them. That's why they're projecting that onto Joseph. And Joseph's like, I would never think like that. But they do, because that's what they would do. So the brothers are haunted by what they did because they wouldn't forgive somebody. So a lot of people are struggling in their own personal life because they have their own morality and they use that project on other people. We see this all the time. The problem is, if you project your own morality on other people, you will live under a shadow, and it's not coming from other people. It's coming from it's not coming from you. Messed it up. It's not coming from other people, it's coming from you. You are putting that on yourself, thinking, well, they're not going to forgive me. They're not going to like me. They're not letting this go. So here's what happens. When someone uses their own moral standard, it becomes their own courtroom because they're not using God's. Okay, that's what ends up happening. So they misjudge other people's motives. They assume rejection and hostility. They create unnecessary distance and shame-based behavior. That's what starts happening. Now, let me give you an example of what I'm talking about, of projection. Have you noticed that those in our society who are doing something actually accuse others of doing the same thing when they're not? Okay? Russia collusion. But who was dealing with Russia? Hillary was. Right? So you accuse somebody of the very thing you're doing. So you put your morality on them. So they're all saying, in the media, this is hostile. It's a constitutional crisis. They're coming after it's just all this crazy stuff. It's Hitler, it's Nazism. And really, it's them. It's them. They're the ones that are going hostile, destroying Teslas. They're the ones telling people to go out and do things. They're the ones with George Soros putting bricks on the side of neighborhoods and telling them to riot. They're the ones who are protesting from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock. They're the ones doing it. And like this Ana Navarro, she's projecting something evil is being done by Trump sending away MS-13 and Venezuelan gangs. She's projecting that. She thinks that's evil. So you see her own morality is projecting that, well, in her mind, Trump is evil because no one would ever send away MS-13 gangs. Talk about twisted morality, right? Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, put darkness for light and light for darkness. So look at this. Hey, Ana Navarro, let's take a look at who Trump's deporting. So this is 133 aliens, illegal aliens busted in New York. The arrests included 20 who had criminal records. 3 illegal aliens had been previously convicted of homicide. 9 of the arrests involved aliens who had previously deported from the United States. It also included a citizen of the Dominican Republic convicted of sexual conduct with a child, and a citizen of South Africa facing current charges related to distribution and possession of child pornography. Do these people sound like normal people? Law-abiding? No. How about this? Houston, 174 illegal aliens with 610 criminal convictions. The group had 610 criminal convictions for offenses committed in the United States. 2 had been previously convicted of homicide-related offenses. 4 had convictions of rape or sexual assault. 5 were convicted of child sex offenses. In addition, 72 had been convicted of physical assaults, 49 for theft-related crimes, 22 for human smuggling-related offenses. They had 415 priors removals from the United States. And Ana Navarro wants to say deporting these criminals is wrong. You see what I'm saying? That's the projection. I'm projecting out my own morality, and my own morality, because it's not based in the Bible, is twisted to where I am supporting MS-13. This is what I'm talking about. This is a principle you're seeing with Joseph's brothers with him. They're projecting on Joseph what they would do themselves. Here's another one. Houston ICE officers deport 174 illegal aliens with 600. Oh, this is the same story, but look at this. One alien had previously deported 39 times. One 48-year-old criminal alien had been removed from the United States 13 times, has 25 criminal convictions, including narcotics, offenses of arrest, identity, domestic violence, assault, battery, larceny, kidnapping, illegal entry, illegal re-entry, destruction of evidence. A 50-year-old criminal alien was a Florencia 13 gang member, had been previously deported 8 times, been convicted of domestic violence, battery, possession of stolen property, drug possession, aggravated assault, gun, and illegal entry. What? Why would we not want these people out of our country? You're here illegally, and look at all you've done. It's not like you're producing anything. Oh. But here's the problem. Obama-appointed judge orders deportation of a legal migrant and leader of MS-13 gang to be returned to the United States. Yeah. We got a problem with our judges, don't we? Their morality is messed up. Here's the response from the White House.
The American people should know who this individual is. He's not some Maryland father, as the mainstream media will make you believe. He's actually a member of MS-13 and was involved in human trafficking. It's unbelievable, the framing of this. Whether this man is in El Salvador or in a U.S. detention center, he should be locked up. And people should also know who MS-13 is. It is a gang that rapes, maims, and kills Americans for sport. They should not be on U.S. soil, and any media outlet who tries to make him a darling or a victim should really be ashamed, because the American people do know better.
Yeah, they do. You got other judges standing in the way of this. Look at this one, pure evil. Colorado House Democrat passes a bill that allows state to seize children from their parents if they misgender or makes misgendering a discriminatory act. What? What? Male fencer competing in women's division. Another guy dressed up like a girl. She bows out. Here again, same thing. Oh, by the way, we're finding out who's behind the Tesla things. Act Blue. Disruption Project, Rise and Resist, Indivisible Project, Democratic Socialists of America. Oh yeah, funded by George Soros, Reid Hoffman, Herbert Sandler, Patricia Baumann, and Leah Hunt Hendricks. Yeah, that's who's behind it. Watch this.
So you went from saying that my outfit was really cute to saying I'm an effing idiot. That's so mean.
But I think that
You
your
did.
point of view is very obstructed, and I think that you just don't understand the magnitude of having a child.
Yeah, well, I'm not the one who admitted they would be okay with killing babies in foster care and killing children that have been
That's
abused.
not the point. What I'm saying.
That's really. She just punched me in the face. We were just doing a street interview with my camera, and everything was fine for over 20 minutes or however long we were filming, and then she just punched me in the face.
So that's what happens when you're pro-life and you're interviewing an abortionist. That's how they respond to you. That's their morality. It's what I'm talking about. That's how they project. They think that you would do the same thing. But here's the Joseph principle. The Joseph principle is this. Joseph said, you guys meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. That's how I'm able to forgive you. That's how I'm able to move on. So believers trust that the hardship, the persecution, the tribulation, antagonism is all incorporated into God's plan to bring about a good. That's how you have to look at things. And if you look at those things, then you can forgive. You don't have to retaliate. You don't have to seek revenge. Forgiveness is rooted not in sentiment or forgetting, but is anchored in the confidence of God, that He will work out the justice and all of that. He didn't excuse the evil done to him. He transcended it by recognizing that God was using evil against him for a greater good. And lastly, Joseph's ability to forgive his brothers came not from trusting them. He didn't trust them, but in trusting God for the justice of it. That's how he got past all that. That's how he was able to deal with the morality involved in that. And lastly, Romans 8:28 is the epitome of this passage. That's what Romans 8:28 means. But notice the caveat. And we know all things work together for the good of those who love God and those who are called according to his purpose. So there's the caveat. If you and I want everything to work for the good, you must love God and you must do what he's wanting to do. You must be called according to his purpose. If you do not love God and if you do not answer his call on your life, not everything will work for your good. It'll actually work against you. So you have to have those two caveats, like Joseph. Joseph epitomized that in order for things to work themselves out. That's the promise we have in Romans 8, but that's the caveat on there. But anyway, we go back to even examples of people who could forgive just the way Joseph is doing. This is Abraham Lincoln. He was asked, what are you going to do with bringing the South back into the Union? He says, I will treat them as if they had never been away. Abraham Lincoln understood that principle in order to unify the nation. I look at Pete Rose, and I cannot believe Major League Baseball didn't induct him to the Hall of Fame. He had asked for forgiveness. He had done everything he needed to do, and yet he died in September last year, age 83, never to be inducted. Trump made a whole thing on he pardoned Pete Rose, and what a shame. She needs to be put into the Hall of Fame. But anyway, the whole point is Major League Baseball won't even forgive Pete Rose for what he did, even though he asked for forgiveness. Interesting. So Joseph dwelt in the land, he and his father's household, and Joseph lived 110 years, and Joseph saw Ephraim's children to the third generation. His children of Machir, the son of Manasseh, were also brought up on Joseph's knees. That's the idea of adoption. And so Joseph said to his brother, I am dying, but God will surely visit you. It's a Hebraism, that God, divine intervention, and bring you out of this land to the land which I swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. So it's actually a prophecy about the Exodus. Then Joseph took an oath from the children of Israel, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall surely carry up my bones from here. So Joseph died, being 110 years old, and they embalmed him, and he was put into a coffin in Egypt. And that's how it ends. But that's not the rest of the story, because you know when Moses leaves, what do? They get Joseph's bones. Now, this is Nablus. This is Joseph's tomb in Nablus. His bones are in Judea, or sorry, Samaria. In Nablus. So if you go in Nablus, there's Joseph's tomb. So Joshua brought him back. It's interesting. Joshua lives the same amount of years, 110 years, and Joseph lives 110 years, kind of the bookends between the Exodus, 110 years. But here's the interesting thing. Have you ever thought about this? I think this is important to understand. Israel carried 2 arks with them when they left with Moses. Did you know that? They carried the Ark of the Covenant, obviously. They had the 10 Commandments and Aaron's rod and the manna inside of it, and they carried that for 40 years in the desert. But they also carried another ark. That ark was the ark that carried Joseph's bones. So they carried 2 arks with them. And so the Hebrew word for coffin and ark are the same words, aron. And so you have both of these things being carried. And what's the idea? It's kind of a mobile prophecy. It's kind of a living testimony. Why? That God would eventually, the living God that's with them right now in the desert, is going to make good on his promises of getting them into the land and making sure that they're resurrected at one point in time so Joseph and Jacob and all of the patriarchs can enjoy the promises. So it was a living testimony of a future promise, and that will come true in the Messianic kingdom. So, like Hebrews says, they all died in faith, not receiving the promise, but having seen them far off, were assured of them. And that's the idea of how to live, right? So the idea is, where are we burying our bones? They all died not receiving the promise. So look, there's 2 ways we're getting out of here. We're either going to be raptured or we're going to die. Now, if we die, that means we didn't see any of the promises that were made to us come fruition in our lives. And they won't. And they won't. So what do we need to expect? We need to expect the same thing, that we will be resurrected one day. We will be brought back to this earth. We will rule and reign with Messiah, and all the promises he's made to us will be given to us. Now, when we experience heaven, whether we're there in the rapture or we're there after death, that is the reality that's real. You are now in the shadowlands. Nothing works here anymore. But in heaven, everything fits. Everything is perfect. There is no sun or moon. The light comes from Jesus, and there's no shadow, and everything produces light. Everything reflects the light coming from him. And the love of God comes to you like you have never experienced in your whole life. When you're in heaven, you will never, ever have experienced what you experience when you're in front of God. You will never want to leave him, ever, when you're in front of him. When he embraces you, you will feel his beard when you embrace him. And then he will do the life review for you. And he will show you what your life meant. All the ups and downs, all the things you went through, he will explain them to you. He will explain to you every impact of your decision, positive and negative, and how it affected other people. He will tell you how valuable you were and what your life meant when you do your life review. And then he will show you everybody that's been waiting for you. You will have a reception, a reunion with everybody that has went on before you. That's what Joseph wanted. He wanted to be with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's why he buried himself in the cave where they were at, because he wanted to be with them too. We have all lost loved ones that have known the Lord. They're in heaven now. But Luke 16 says there will be a grand reunion with all of them. They will meet you, and you will meet loved ones you have never met before. There have been loved ones that you have never met because they died. They died early on before you were even born, but they're relatives of you, and they will meet you there. And they will welcome you, and you will, and everything about heaven says you belong here. Everything about heaven says, this is your home, not here. Everything about this, the trees, the grass, the animals, everything says you belong here. And if you doubt that, you're missing the hope that we have. Even your pets will be there. Imagine all those animals that you had waiting for you. Because you know why? People who have studied NDEs, near-death experiences, Jesus showed them their animals that were waiting for them in heaven. There are animals in heaven. All the animals that God ever created are there. They will be resurrected one day and live on the new earth. God doesn't get rid of his creation. Your animals will be there. Because you know why? He created heaven for you. I go to prepare a place for you. It's for you. It's your home. He didn't need it. He made it for you. You will see colors you have never seen before. The colors even have sound. The colors even have smell. Everything, wherever Jesus walks, stands at attention. The animals, the trees, the wind, everything stands at attention. There are mountains there. There are valleys. There are meadows. There are jungles. There are forests. Everything has been prepared for you and I. Everything. Children that die in this life, or babies who have been murdered in the womb, grow up in heaven. And when you see them, they'll be 25 to 30 years old. But they were able to grow up in heaven. They lived their life there. That was cut short here. There's children in heaven. And they play with angels. And they grow up and they learn. And they're there to meet you when you get there. Some of you have had miscarriages. You will meet that child. That child will be waiting for you at the gates. That's what you have to look forward to. And when you're out of this ugly body of ours that's full of death, you will be alive like you have never been alive before. You will feel alive that you've never felt before in your life because you're free of this decaying body that's on you. That's where you bury your bones. That's your promised land. That's where you end up. And that's where our hope is. Let's pray. Father, thank you, Lord, for what we can learn from the patriarchs burying their bones in the land that you promised them. You have promised heaven. You have promised us the new Jerusalem. And we look forward to that. And being in your presence, of seeing Jesus, seeing you, seeing the Holy Spirit, seeing angels, seeing the heavenly city, seeing paradise, and experiencing it. We long for that, Father. It's in our hearts. We know we're not fitted for this world. We know we don't belong here. So help us to be responsible and live for the next one. And Father, if there's anyone that doesn't know Jesus, help them to understand that they need a Savior, that he died for their sins on a cross, was buried, and rose on the third day to give them everlasting life so they can be with him forever in this place called heaven. Bless us now as we go. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.